Hi everyone. So today I'm going to talk about connecting to the GO train. GO Transit is a commuter rail service in the Toronto area. Highway congestion was getting bad, so the province of Ontario decided to try out an alternative to widening highways. They decided to offer a commuter rail service meant to get cars off the highways by parking at stations instead. But expanding surface parking at stations is no longer viable, and parking structures, of which several have been built in the past decade, are really expensive. But despite most customers driving and parking at the station, close to half said they'd be willing to take local transit to and from their station. It's just not convenient enough. But now, ridership growth is constrained by parking. There has to be a mode shift to accommodate projected growth. I'll be focusing on local transit as it's the most scalable option and has been proven to work in suburban areas in the City of Toronto and elsewhere. Before we attempt to shift the mode share, we first have to ensure that it's a viable alternative for Go customers. My research focuses on determining whether it's a viable alternative or not. What makes feeder buses attractive? There are many different factors, all of which can be quantified from various data sources. With GO trains running every 15 to 30 minutes, reliability is extremely important. You won't take a bus to the train if your bus is late every few days and you end up missing your train and having to wait up to 30 minutes to catch the next one. I'll be looking at two stations, both of which are at over 100% of parking capacity with different levels of land use around their stations. For each station, I'll be looking at one local transit route that serves a nearby residential neighborhood from the station. Being in a walkable area, Port Credit has one of the highest walking mode shares in the network. For this station, I'll be looking at the Cawthorpe Park neighborhood, starting at the Star as the origin and taking the 8 bus to Port Credit Go to an eastbound train downtown. Being a later built suburb, Rutherford Go is not as walkable and transit friendly as Port Credit. For this station, I'll be looking at the Thornhill Woods neighborhood, starting at the Star as the origin and taking the 87 bus to Rutherford Go to a southbound train downtown. In order to compare local transit and park and ride, I calculated their generalized costs. The generalized cost is a sum of the monetary costs, like driving a car or paying a fare, plus the cost of the time spent making the trip, which is valued at $17.36 an hour, the figure Metrolinx uses in their business cases. Buffer times represent the time that schedules don't include, such as the time that a bus could be late by, or the time you spend circling around the lot looking for a parking spot. Another example of a buffer time is having to arrive at a stop before a bus is scheduled to arrive. Say, for example, if a bus arrives 2 minutes early at your stop, that's a penalty of 2 minutes. Google Maps and travel models don't take this into account. This table shows the difference between the generalized cost of using transit for that trip minus the generalized cost for driving and parking. In Early Bird, arriving at the station before 7:30 a.m., which varies by station, you have an easy drive and have plenty of spots to choose from. At peak hour, there's some traffic congestion on the local roads, plus you have to circle around to find a spot, which could take a while if you find one at all. That's why having a reserved parking spot decreases the generalized cost, even though it adds $2.45 to the cost of the trip. Survey data was used to estimate the number of commuters originating from each of the two neighborhoods traveling to their local GO station across all modes. And how many of those commuters took local transit to their station was estimated from APC and AFC Presto data. Now we have the local transit mode shares that correspond to the generalized costs that are calculated for local transit. This links the quality of a local transit connection to its mode share, which could be used to predict how changes in bus and rail service would affect the mode share on usage of local transit at each station. I showed that reliability and schedule alignment are critical when connecting to infrequent trains. More frequent rail service will help address this too by decreasing the penalty of missing the train. And it's hard not to notice that it costs $1 to connect to local transit, but nothing to park. Increasing the cost of reserved parking spots and using that additional revenue to fund free local transit connections would further increase the local transit mode share and allow for more ridership growth as the quality of local transit improves. Lastly, increasing awareness is vital for getting Go customers to switch to, or at least try, transit. Using online maps, like the one shown here, is one potential tool, which I developed last summer to help Metrolinx planners see the options customers have to connect to local transit from each train. There's also an ongoing pilot for adding a map of local transit options to 3 Go stations, which are not studied here. Maps, whether online or in person, would help customers become aware of their local transit options and have them consider switch to using local transit, which would increase ridership growth sustainably as the Toronto area continues to grow as well. Thank you.